Hello, my name is Jacquie Widin and I work with the University of Technology, Sydney, Australia. Thank you for inviting me to speak at your symposia. This is a timely event in the light of the continued expansion in the markets of English language teaching. I acknowledge that many of you will probably tell similar stories to me and have similar ideas, but I hope that I will be able to contribute something to your debate, and I look forward to a continued involvement with your group and organisation. My interest in English language teaching in development contexts was sparked by my involvement in a university-run aid project in Laos, PDR. The project focused on English language teacher education, resource production and English for specific purposes for government officials. I am particularly interested in the way universities run international aid projects and in the question of who benefits from these projects. During my time in Laos and my work with the project, I became increasingly concerned about the way project rhetoric and the work on the ground seemed to be in complete opposition. In spite of the project's public persona as a bilateral one, that is, both countries were equal partners, it was clear from the start that the economic benefits from the project flowed pretty much directly back to the donor country, in this case, Australia. My research into this project and other similar ones uncovered regularities in the project field, which I tried to capture in my book, Illegitimate Practices in Global English Language Education. Elizabeth Erling has asked me to address some of the central critiques that I made in the book and in what ways we could work better in the development context. In this brief talk, I'm looking at the way Australian universities work. In Australia, education is the third biggest export behind coal and wheat, and English language teaching is a significant player in the field. So universities, those cash-hungry ones, have a big interest in seeking funds from international aid projects or international students. In the case of Laos, the university was the principal player. In the projects I've been involved with, language, of course, is a key factor and one of the great tensions. An issue facing us in Laos was the low funding of general education. We were producing English language resources, but there were really very few resources in Lao language, hardly anything. So we were working against the theories and practices of our own TESOL and applied linguistic courses, where the development of first language literacy is of primary importance. The project management were not receptive to our concerns and were driven to keep to the schedules and Gantt charts to meet project milestones. This was only one aspect of language in the project. There were many others, but another that is pertinent to our discussion here is the skills of the host country project staff. Their bilingual skills were not given the recognition and legitimacy that they deserved. It was ironic in the sense that the project's goal was to improve English language proficiency and teaching skills, but the staff's bilingual capacities did not give them a position of power or recognition in the project. In terms of the university's role, which was of great interest to me, the university exported its practices to a completely different and to most of the non-Lao staff an unknown context. This lack of knowledge of the local context proved a huge barrier to working productively with Lao staff. Also, the project model was problematic. Who owns and controls the project? The short time frame given for project implementation, development and completion? The project's a one-off, and so you must get it right the first time, or then again it may reinvent the wheel of what's already been there. From working within the project model, which, as we know, originates from the donor's context, there are certain assumptions about how work is carried out and how it may seem normal and natural for usually the donor country staff. These work practices and resulting hierarchies are deemed legitimate. In my experience, the host country staff work as counterparts, a delegitimised role, and paid at a much lower rate than the expat staff, even though the host country staff have greater expertise in both language skills and the local context. Another issue is the project teams may lack continuity, and this of course hinders progress. And also the project designs tend to be very rigid in spite of perhaps externally rapidly changing contexts. And of course we need to face the question of what happens after the project. So what do we do in the face of these issues with working in development context? If international English language teaching initiatives continue to be undertaken by Australian educational institutions, it is imperative to rethink how best to work in a collaborative and productive way. The stories that I have in my book have shown the necessity to reiterate the demand for the development of a critical pedagogy of English language teaching, one that takes on board the ideological knowledge about English as a language of power and oppression, as well as a language that is currently functioning as a means of international communication. The development of a critical pedagogy has strong foundations. Kumarava Duvulu, in his books on post-method pedagogy and cultural globalisation, provides a framework and approach that embraces the particularities of the context and the needs of the participants. Critical English language teaching pedagogy involves a genuine engagement in collaborative ethnographic studies and also includes a dimension of social action and individual action, and puts forward a grounded and inclusive approach to language education within a global context. In terms of this approach to English language teaching, it recognises inequities in power, language rights, and the cultural interface between host country and donor providers. Critical English language teaching pedagogy is built on the premise of linguistic rights, the rights for learners to maintain and develop their first language, the right of access to additive bilingual education, and the right to freely use their own language. International English language education will need to embed a rights framework within their programs to ensure that benefits are distributed equally in the field. The word counterpart would disappear from the international education field and be replaced with a term suitable to signal host country expertise. A critical English language teaching pedagogy would also evenly distribute the positions of language expert and technical advisor within the field. Okay, so that's the dream for an improved field of English language teaching in the development context. So what is the role for university within this context, and what are the ways that universities can work in a collaborative and productive way? So my view is that there needs to be a way for universities to find their position as good international citizens to help mitigate the negative effects of globalisation that divide between the rich and poor and inequitable trade relations. A partial answer to this is to find ways of designing projects and conducting feasibility studies that involve host country participants as equal partners. It also means giving a voice to the groups or organisations designated to be the ultimate beneficiaries. Thank you for this opportunity to present this talk. I really appreciate it and have a good time in this symposium, and I hope that we can continue discussing these very important issues. So thank you.